ungendered products for Gen Z, and it's kind of morphed into supplements and body care, and it's taken on a life of its own. And I guess it's kind of centered also around this whole like teen health model and mental health. With my boys, mental health's been a big part of a personal part, less of my global health experience. And so the Gen Z products is also kind of a mental health component.
How interesting. I'm sorry for all the interruptions.
Yeah, it's
It's really
okay.
interesting, and I want to hear everything you're saying.
Yeah.
Kelly?
Yeah, Dara, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm actually wondering if we've crossed Sierra Club's population program right around the time you were at Population Service International.
Probably, that was like early in my career.
Yeah,
Bit, yeah.
and I went to GW, so
so
for my first
probably,
year
yeah.
of college. So you seem familiar, and I wonder if that's why. What are your biggest interests in, what's your familiarity with the scope of public health at the county level and how that fits into sort of the statewide system?
Yeah.
And then what are your interests? Like what are the topics that most interest you in that scope?
It's a big question. So I think the charge of the county commissions is huge, right? You're kind of spanning everything, especially with the global pandemic happening. But I also think as things kind of settle, there's a huge mental health component, there's environmental health, there's the whole gamut of what's happening in healthcare, and I think it's been interesting to see it more of a higher level of helping. I know with Joanna as the director, is kind of the advice, the sounding board, and from what it looks like on the current board, it's a lot of people in emergency medicine, other people in experience around here, a little bit less in the global health perspective, or a kind of vaccine drives health component. My kids have definitely been impacted with that in the high school and middle school in the last couple of years. My interest would probably be in those kind of the bigger infectious disease mental health components, but I'm definitely aware of kind of more on the a lot of times they're like, well, can you work on this? Can you work on that? So while I was working as a consultant for Gates, they said, can you go do the ARIS job, the VP of External for TB? And it was because it was funded by Gates. So they kind of have all been connected. And I've never really been able to live directly in house foundation job for longer, but I preferred. I was on the East Coast for most of the time.
And do you plan to be in Aspen for a while?
Oh yes, my kids are the happiest they've ever been.
Oh, cool.
So I'm not moving them again, and they're pretty,
Oh, that's
really
great.
happy here. So we came here. We used to spend a month in the summer and 2 weeks in the winter, because their dad's family's been here since 1967.
Here.
It's this condos, the Chimney across from Highlands. They're one of the original owners there. So we've been here for a while. Yeah. Old. Yeah. Very old.
It's still on the cliff. It hasn't fallen in the river.
No. Yes.
Do you speak any other languages?
That's a good question. French, mostly. Although people will laugh at me because I learned my French in Africa.
Sure.
So, yeah. But
You
not
speak a
Spanish.
little bit differently than people from
Yeah.
France.
Mm-hmm.
I learned to speak French in school, but then in Polynesia, and it was the same thing.
Right?
In talking to a Polynesia, I could understand everything they said. Talking to a person from France, it was like,
I used to get in taxis in New York, and if there'd be a West African, and they would look at me, they had to look twice to see where that accent was from.
Sure.
Great.
any more questions from you, Greg?
Well, I see Jordana's with us on the call, and I don't know if Jordana wants to, God, have you had a chance to meet? I guess that's my question. Have you had a chance to meet Dara? It'd be nice to.
I've not met in person, but I've definitely followed her since she was
She came on. Okay.
interim in the role, and then it got the role during the pandemic. So
Right.
I followed that.
Right.
How
Well,
do you think we did?
I think you guys did really well, actually.
How do you
Yeah.
think Greg did? As the chair of public health?
you know what? The thing for me I can share with you is I would walk into a room, and Jordana can verify this, and I'd realize knowledgeable person in the room, yet I was the chair. So it kept me right in my lane, running the meeting and keeping it zipped. And that was fine for me.
Yeah.
So,
I think I would also share in this is that from my experience, especially in vaccines and infectious diseases, and probably a lot of things, it's so political, right? So like the reason why we still have polio is this politics. It's northern Nigeria and Afghanistan. It's completely political. And so we're seeing that play out with COVID as well. And, or for instance, you know, some other cancers that now have vaccines for them. There's cervical cancer now with the screening we have, but it's all about advocacy and communications of what's available to people. So.
I've seen the articles lately and heard some stuff on NPR of the criticism towards the United States about their response to COVID in general. And I guess Biden shocked everybody yesterday by saying the pandemic is over. And it's definitely political.
Some of those commentaries challenging to overcome, but yeah.
I think we may have avoided that fairly well here. You hear what's coming from everywhere else, but I think our board was fairly, easy. It was easy to reach consensus on our board, and so that was easy for us.
Yeah, I think from the outside, the public view, that was we were seeing. I think, and then if you would compare it to other counties nearby or even the state, that was you could see the difference.
I think Greg is forgetting some of the negatives. When we
I'm a
got
Pollyanna.
sued by private consortiums of unnamed restaurants.
And all
things
the
like that.
restaurants.
It was
that.
Yeah.
We weren't completely in agreement on all the restaurant decisions, I'll remind you.
But that's your biggest challenge. I think you did pretty well.
Right.
Could have happened, or school-wise, or other tourism.
So what's your travel schedule like?
Zero now.
Oh, really?
Zero now. It's really challenging to travel from Aspen into Africa. I did have an election I worked on in Armenia last year, and it took an extra day on either end.
Right.
So I'm really trying to limit that, plus with my kids.
Got it.
School.
And you're going to West Africa to where?
Mostly Senegal,
To Senegal, okay.
but a lot of South Africa too, which is a long haul.
Right, sure.
And your kids go too? No.
I would do crazy 3-day trips to Africa. I go in, do my meetings, and leave.
Pre-Zoom.
Which is easy from New York. Well, and that's the other thing is Africa doesn't really work on Zoom. And both connectivity and how things happen and engagement, it's still in person.
Okay,
And so that's a challenge that we're
I'll
seeing,
say.
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
Well, I think you would certainly bring some interesting background to the board. And we will get it together next week, and we will let you know. And it was really nice to meet you. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
and even if it doesn't, happy to answer questions or be available too, because sometimes I'll get random calls from like the Aspen Jewish community or someone like, what do you think about this on the vaccines? And so I like that people are engaged in the dialogue, because I think that shows an interest to at least learn about what's happening or options.
That's what I was going to suggest is, we've actually got 3 very strong candidates at least. I thought we may have had another, but it's just 3 for the positions, for this position. But I think there'll be opportunities, to be engaged as a citizen or, stay in touch with us, please.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's so great to have you in the community. I think it's your perspective and your global perspective is amazing. So.
Thank you.
To invite you
sure.
to my ladies' salon.
I would love that. I know.
To county work.
Great. Have a good rest
Thank
of
you,
your day.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, no, we get discriminated against. They don't, we're over 40 and we're
It's
male.
gotta hang together sometimes, sorry.
Back.
So we just don't have the TVs, but everything else is moving along swimmingly, so.
Perfect. Probably
Okay,
better
we're back on.
without the
Great.
TVs. Okay, so we'll just carry on. And is Lindsay with us? Yes, she is. I see your name, not your face. Are you there, Lindsay?
Are we early? No, no.
No, we're not early. We're right on time.
I know Jody is also on to assist Lindsay. Jody, are you on as well?
Wonder if they can't hear us.
You might want to put your
There's
audio
Lindsay.
on.
Uh-huh.
You-
There we go. Okay,
Oh, there they are.
They're there.
there.
Hi, Lindsay. Hi, Jody. Can you hear us?
Oh, we need to put one of
Some
your,
of you need to
Jody can. Can you hear me,
One
Lindsay?
of you turn your audio on.
Turn your audio up, Francie.
Just go ahead and turn
The
yours
rest
on.
of us won't.
Okay.
I can do it.
I got it.
Only one though.
How about now? Lindsay, can you hear me now? Steve, you're muted. I can't
Okay.
hear you. Talk again, Steve. I can't hear
Nope.
Steve. Jody, can you hear anything now?
They can hear us, but can we hear
No,
them?
they can't hear us.
I just put on.
Some of you, so you just have to turn your volume up.
My volume is
there a
up,
volume?
but I click to join audio.
No, you're good.
Lindsay, can you talk?
It's connected to Elmo.
Yeah, it's-
No,
I have
that
no
physical
idea.
Elmo that's sitting in there.
Okay, can you
Yeah.
connect to your audio, like
The
unmute
signal
your
flow
computer
went through
so you
the
have
Elmo.
sound? Oh, so the actual hardware is outside the room.
Yes.
Elmo.
I have some.
Oh, I hear people now.
Okay, so everyone
There's
else
a
on
lot
mute.
going on.
Everybody hit mute.
So, yeah, mute your audio and speak.
So this goes down to
This is so different than it usually looks.
So now I can hear everything Brandon's saying.
There. Can they hear us?
So the
Can you hear
objective
it?
is to
Oh, I'm
get
on
this
mute.
on the TV screen.
Can you guys hear us
Okay.
in the room? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hear you now. Can
Okay,
you hear
perfect.
me?
Yes.
We just needed to mute this.
Ah, that was a little.
We good? Can you guys all hear?
Some of you, Francie, speak into your microphone, and let's see if it's clearer this time.
All right, can you hear?
Before, it sounded like your voice, everybody's voice was going through Dara's microphone is what it sounded like.
Oh, really?
Fairly low volume. Hers was very,
So how about now, Steve?
Oh, there we go.
but that sounds better.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Lindsay, let's turn it over to you.
I was over there on the other side.
Oh, no.
But we do need it quiet in here.
Just let me know when you're
Take
ready.
control. You're the chair.
I'm going to. Thank you. Okay, Lindsay, now, quickly, before we lose you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
These technical difficulties. Lindsay Maish with Pekin County Human Services. Good to see you. I have Jody Smith on with me as my support person today because what we're going to be talking about, I had actually been working pretty closely with John Ely on some new lease agreements. As you know, we have Recovery Resources who has a new lease, and now we have Lift Up as an approved vendor or a recommended vendor through a kind of informal RFP process. And as we're crafting these leases, we're realizing we live in kind of a new world of work where the way that we're providing services the way that we were once providing services pre-COVID, which was very in person and people coming into the building and every office space in this building was being utilized and clients were being seen in them. And now it's a really different world where we have much less engagement, community engagement. There are a couple of businesses where it really is still very in person, like Community Health Services that's doing, maternal care and immunizations and vaccinations and things like that. So it's still very much in person. And then there are some organizations where it's more remote, like Mind Springs Health. They're able to do some more remote type work and be seeing their clients, maybe not always in an office setting. So as we have new vendors coming into the building, we have some questions that we're looking for guidance from you all. And that's really about the use of the building and what the expectations are for that. So right now we have Lift Up, who's a recommended vendor to come in to take the space that used to be what was Detox upstairs. And they're proposing that their functional hours be 3 days a week or not a full day. And we've kind of gone back and forth on, do we ask them to be open during normal business hours, or do we encourage them to meet the public, right? the public's need or the community's need there, and how do we kind of decipher through this now that we're living in a new age world of remote and in-person work. So we come to you today for considerations for future selection and in-kind lease agreements and the way that we're managing these strategic partnerships with our tenants for in-kind leases in the building.
And what,
I'll pause and let you all ask some questions.
yeah, any questions? Kelly?
Sorry, you want me to turn this down now, right? Okay. Sorry, we're still struggling over here. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused because I thought we already did in-kind leases for the tenants there. You know, and I know we track it for our own. What, I'm a little confused on what
Like, why is this
decision point
different?
we're asking for, yeah.
Yeah, so we're asking, we came to work session to ask for guidance on how to proceed as the in-kind amount,
get
we kind
more
of track
volume?
that amount. And the amount based, so that in tandem with the number of hours that somebody may be opened a week are not necessarily in alignment. If we were doing numbers to numbers, we kind of in human services look at it as community need and how are we meeting those community needs. But this concept of the way that we're providing the in-kind, is there an expectation around how much they
that's
should be
better.
open or the way that they should be open, how they should be accessible to?
Because normally we count it.
That's you.
Okay, hang on. Okay, so normally we count it.
I can't hear you now. Now I can't hear you, Kelly.
Stay muted. Can you hear us now, Kelly?
You mean Lindsay?
You mean Lindsay?
Try that. Or Lindsay? Can you hear us?
I cannot hear what somebody's saying to me.
Okay.
Okay, so
I feel like I'm on like
I'm connected
live
to
news or something, you know?
and then I don't understand. It's never come out of the.
Sorry, Lindsay.
Speaker laptops still need to be open.
We're not getting like correct audio in the room like we normally do, so that's why we're fumbling with it.
Lindsay, can you hear my voice?
I can
So
hear you.
maybe you should come over here, Kelly, and talk through the speaker.
Well, I just don't know why mine's double. Can you hear now? Can we hear you?
No, it's not double. Now we can't hear you. You can't hear us now.
Can you talk, Lindsay?
Can you hear me now? Can Lindsay, I think, can Steve hear me? I think Steve can probably hear me.
Yeah,
That's
Yep,
right.
Steve can hear me, but
we're on the same wavelength. Those of us on Zoom.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Jody says yes.
a little bit. I can a little bit hear Rich now. Yep,
And me, can you hear me?
in a bubble, in a reverberative bubble, yes.
How about now?
Whatever we did before seemed to work better.
But
What if we turned off the television screens and just used our computers?
What did you change on there?
I wonder if we could combine and just tie in and get out of
And just Zoom with each other?
Zoom. Do you think that would work? You think that would work? We just get out of Zoom and
Yeah, let's just do that.
No TV, no nothing, just us.
Yeah, so we get this figured out quickly. We got everybody on the, we're Zooming the public can pick it up, because we've got the address that we put out for street.
And it's been recorded for public comment, so.
So if they can hear you, try telling them that, Rich.
Okay. Yeah, Hey, I think what we're gonna do on our end is we're gonna go out and just get back into just the regular Zoom meeting, and we're gonna, X-nay everything in this room and just go Zoom. Okay, so that's our plan on this end. So you can all stay on. I think that'll work, but we just need to get out and get back in on our end.
So all of us get out?
Yeah.
We'll try that.
So we're gonna, yeah, I don't know if this is all tied in, but if it is, if we could unhook what's going on here and just let this Zoom, right?
So the four of you.
So wait or
cannot-
do it now?
The four of you cannot be in the same room and go into the same Zoom meeting. You'll have feedback.
Just
throughout.
like we were
only
doing.
have
We-
one microphone on.
Right, we were doing that earlier. We had one mic on and one speaker.
I mean, this isn't hindering or doing it. This can stay status quo. It's not
Okay.
interfering
Right.
with anything.
Do you have a USB mic? Like a little plug into USB?
I do not.
Okay.
I'm just
We
turning
can get one.
the TVs off.
Fine.
Okay.
If you do that, we don't have audio either. So if we can
Yeah.
just leave it the way that it is, then we can actually have a recording and
But
post it to.
can they hear us though?
They're gonna hear them through their individual.
Okay. Okay.
But are we gonna each have our mics on, or is just one for the room?
Keep it muted.
We can hear you absolutely clearly right now.
Should be one for
Only
them,
one person in this room can have their mic open at a time.
which is good. That's great. Only one person gets to talk.
Okay, but we connect with audio from the computer.
So
I guess
let me
that's
see,
the way you guys
because the
wanna
trick is that when when one of you guys is speaking here, it picks up from when you have the volume from the Zoom. So connect to audio, but keep it on mute.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear.
Yeah, if you're not speaking, keep it on mute.
But
Yeah.
we can turn up the volume.
Turn the volume when you're not
So we
speaking.
can hear.
There should be one computer with the volume up. And yeah, and just make sure that when one of you guys is speaking in the room, you turn off the volume down, so you don't hear that feedback from the Zoom meeting. If that makes sense.
No, say it.
Recording in progress.
Oh, my
So
God.
everyone
I think it's gonna work.
on mute.
I'm good.
And all your speakers are off. Is that speaker off on that?
I
see,
can
that's
hear
what I'm
you
Far
through
one
my
over there.
computer, Rich.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So when one of you guys is speaking from the room, just put the mute.
Yeah.
Mute your sound.
Okay.
So just put yeah.
All right, I'm going to speak. So everybody else mute.
Behind.
But now I can't speak.
No, you they can hear you.
You can hear me?
Thumbs up.
Okay. What I really want to do is hear Lindsay. Are you ready to give it a shot, Lindsay?
Can you hear me now?
Mm.
Can you hear me?
Someone needs to turn one person.
You can?
I think yours has audio. I think yours has audio coming through.
It's fine. Mine's down.
Yours.
So help me to understand having the audio come through this little box.
It was
Oh, you know what?
echoing.
It's because this, she's speaking into this, so that's her feedback. But
This? Turn this off?
then if they are speaking there, they can't. Yeah,
But
we
my
need to turn.
question is, my ultimate question is, instead of her speaker because of her laptop feeding the room the audio,
Mhm.
how come we can't have this one just be that audio?
Because they can't hear.
There was audio coming out of this device.
Understood. Was that creating feedback or was it just too
Yeah.
soft?
No,
too
it was
soft.
echoing.
Well,
This-
that's because
can-
she
can
had
you hear
one
me?
of.
Well then,
Can you all hear
I would
me?
suggest
Laptops
to
are
go to the
with-
phone
with-
system
No?
and not dial in because you're not
No,
gonna
you
get around
cannot?
that feedback issue.
No.
It's just not gonna happen.
Because the feedback sounds like it's coming
not
from the
designed to
Peking
have
County
people
Zoom one,
participate on
the
Zoom in
camera
the
that's
same
up in the
room,
corner.
Picking, like,
Feeding back off each other.
which is why we go through all this USB system, is so it cuts off that audio.
Yeah, so when we had the owl this morning, we still had issues though. We only had one computer operating.
Well, that was because the volume was on your computer, so that owl was picking up on the sound coming out of your computer.
Correct.
So are we better to just completely get off Zoom? Is there,
I'm not sure what
and
all
if it's all
happened
going
in
through the
my
laptop here?
absence, I would say yes. Having a little bit of visual so that they can see like a thumbs up or whatever is fine, but I would kill all the audio on your laptops. Like you can be in the meeting.
You mean just mute it or come in without computer
Without
audio?
Computer audio.
So leave, come back in without computer audio.
That way you don't have any
Oh my gosh.
potential of.
Or just
No,
go
you don't-
to
you don't need
leave
to-
computer audio. Just
I don't
So
leave.
right now, as how you have it, you're good.
I'm good.
Yeah, because you can't get the audio from here, so you're not hearing anything.
Doesn't
from your
sound like
computer.
there's sound coming out.
I've got it turned all the way down and the icon for the speaker is crossed out, but there's still a little bit of audio bleeding through.
May
Lindsay,
Yeah, you're on.
I'm good.
do you hear us from the
There's
room?
still a little tiny bit. I don't think this would cause feedback though, because it's so tiny.
Can you hear me?
She's making.
Hello?
Is the
Can you
audio
hear
up?
me? Can you all hear me? I think Steve and Jody can hear me and that's it, right?
Okay.
I can hear you.
So,
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear
Okay,
us?
is it work?
You heard me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, don't anybody touch anything. Lindsay, talk.
as you
Okay, where did I leave off before the echoing?
Nobody move your
happened?
I remember, and I have a question.
Okay, question.
Okay.
That's where we left off.
Okay, so you were talking about how should we assess this in-kind donation. I always thought it was based on square footage, not anything having to do with hours open or number of clients served or any of that. Is that correct?
Jody, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, Kelly, that is correct. But I think the change is that we wanted to check in with the board to make sure that you were all still okay with kind of a change in service where those nonprofits are not there 7 days or 5 or 7 days a week like they had been in the past. You know, and so I think we're just verifying, are you okay with us entering into new leases with modified, considerably modified numbers of hours and services provided to the public? In particular, the Lift Up providing 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week.
But
We just
still-
didn't want to go in and put in a 3-day lease and then have you guys come back and go, why are we doing that? We were just doing a gut check before we start entering and negotiating leases.
I mean, have services diminished or are they just being offered in different ways?
In-person services have diminished and they're being offered remotely. So the office spaces aren't being utilized the way they once were. So pre-COVID, every office space was filled in this building. And now, and we're not gonna even talk about the internal, right, for the internal folks who work for Pickens County and how we're utilizing those spaces. We wanna get clear about our external partners and tenants and just know, like Jody said, kind of, we're doing a gut check on what you all think and if you have any guidance or if you're okay with this kind of new way that we're providing in-kind leases for organizations who may only be providing services 1, 2, 3 days a week.
So they're not only not at the office, they're not providing services on those other days.
No, so they're right. So for ones like Lift Up, right, that'll be a little bit different. So they're only going to be in the office 3 days a week for certain hours. And what we've asked them at this point is to coordinate with other organizations in the building to make sure that there's still access to those services, even if they're not there, which is very new. That's not something that we've done in the past. So we're kind of rolling with some of these thoughts, ideas, and wanted to come in and get some feedback or questions or guidance from you all for us to be considering as we're proceeding with new tech, because we might have some new opportunities as well in the future.
Yeah, and I think to that, that we could take this, if the board wants us to have, the suites full 5 days a week, we can go with that. If we're okay doing a modified hours of operation and remote over the coming year as leases are about to expire, space is not being utilized properly, it gives Lindsay and myself a little bit of teeth to either reassign some of those spaces and or reutilize for other nonprofits, because back in the day we had a wait list of people that wanted to come into the building, and we could never do that. So I think we're looking for that broad, where does the board at, and how do you want us to move forward as we renew and refresh these leases and opportunities?
I guess I'm still a little confused about whether the services in all of these different things are all being provided the same amount of time as they were before, but in this building and I guess in some of the other buildings that you're talking about, people won't be on site, but they'll be accessible. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what we're hearing from our partners, is that the number of services has not necessarily gone down, but the way that they're providing it is a little bit different. So it may be remote from their home, but there's still 10 office spaces in that suite where only 2 people are sitting in there at a time. And how do, is it a good utilization of, right, all the power, right? We pay for a lot to keep the lights on and to keep the building warm and to keep, some of these things where we're kind of taking those things into consideration, but just needing some guidance.
Yeah, Greg.
Thanks for this, Lindsay and Jody. I would, hearing this, what it sounds like is, as you've said, the nature of work in this case has changed, and people are doing things differently, which allows, which I think we should be trying to be as flexible as possible to keep accommodating them, but also to use our space as efficiently as possible. So my questions were, what are the financial implications for us? And you just suggested the utilities and the heat and all that stuff are certainly something that are still costing us, even though we're not charging them to be there. This is a cost to us. So if you have the flexibility to look for other possible tenants who can, what do you call it? Like, hot beds, share offices.
WeWork.
And make it more efficient. I would support that, and I'd want to give you the flexibility to do that, because if the nature of the whole thing is changing, the sooner we start figuring out, the better. And then when it comes to the leases, because this is a new model and people are having to change, would it be okay to do perhaps shorter term leases, or leases that would allow them and us the flexibility to modify the program so nobody's stuck? So I was going to recommend, looking at the leases and saying, well, maybe it's not a 3-year or even a 1 year. Maybe this is a shorter term deal while we figure this out. And then I'd love the idea of the spaces being used by more people, right? So I think this is great, and I'm glad you brought it to us.
So could we, for instance, in a suite that Lift Up is using, could we have somebody else in there on other days so that it's not sitting empty?
So for the sake of it's that depends. So it could, for Lift Up, that would be a pantry. It's a food pantry, and it's really specific to that service. But to Greg's point, we could be looking at space in the building as opportunities to be like hotel suites for our partners, for partner organizations that we work really closely with, right? So to bring up that same sort of like where we know that one of the vendors has 10 suites up there, and there's only 2 coming in a day or something, right? Could we repurpose that space up there so that, to Greg's point, we have kind of a hotel where any of our partners could come in and utilize that space, meet with clients. We would just have to look at what those agreements look like with those partners and kind of how, so it offers some of that flexibility. But places like community health services probably couldn't move around. They have immunizations and vaccinations in there that, they wouldn't be able to like move things. So they would stay. There are some that are really dependent on their space to be able to provide the service, like a food pantry or like a, like community health services. And then there's the ones where we could be moving around a little bit throughout even internally, we could be, the Pekin County staff could be moving around a little bit to have more accessibility to the community.
I have one more question, if you don't mind.
You're the chair.
Well, isn't that how our BOCC offices work a little bit? Aren't they sort of like a WeWork situation?
I'm not sure, I think for internal purposes, and Rich and Jody can probably answer that a little bit better, not for community partners though. It's unique, the Human Services building, because I think it's one of the only buildings where we share this space with community tenants and we have, right, or community partners, and we have leases with them.
I see.
Yeah, and so the Health and Human Services building, when it was built, part of the approval process says that it has to be human services related and nonprofit. So it's not like, and Rich, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that I'm right on this. We couldn't take the assessor's office and move it to Health and Human Services to use up the space. But the BOCC office has 5 touchdown spaces. People reserve the desk and that's where they land for the day or half a day or an hour. So yeah, it is a hoteling kind of situation. Within those partners, they could do, the nonprofits could do some, because it's all about confidentiality and of the patients and clients. And there's certain clients that shouldn't cross over to the other clients because you might have victims and the perpetrators in the same kind of area. So it's very strategic about how that might look, and that would be really something. And then the last thing that I would say is, right now I think we're doing 2-year leases. We were doing 5, but we could certainly look at what that looks like in the future, this coming year as things come up, because maybe some of them only get a year. Maybe it's really appropriate for somebody to have 6 months. But then there's some like community health who's really there and providing a service. Maybe they do need the 5-year because, doing that every year kind of puts them in a uneasy, like, are we here or are we not, so giving some security to those, that we know that and we support already, like community develop or community health. So, but yeah, so I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
Are you guys keeping a wait list now for other partners who are interested?
No, the way that so as space has opened up, what we've done is we've informally RFP'd it. So we pull together a committee. We say that here's the human services or public health main core services, and here's what we're looking for in this space. So we're being really specific in our strategic plan about what partners come into the building, and that's how we do it, is to open it up. I don't have a wait list. There were more than one applicant in some of the RFPs. So we do have organizations that are interested.
And you guys, I imagine, have thought through this longer and chatted with partners. What do you think? What do you recommend?
Yeah, we've kind of gotten a temperature on a few of the things. And it's funny you asked that, Kelly, because I don't like coming to you all without a really solid recommendation. And for this one, I thought I don't really have a really solid recommendation. I want, like Greg said, I want the space to be used. And it's prime, right? It's prime space. We're located we're on a bus route. We are next to the hospital. We're next to the senior center. We're in just a good place for people to get services. So what I would love to see is just better utilization of this space for us to actually just look at it and see if there are opportunities like what you're saying. And what I'm hearing you say is if we had some more flexibility around, like maybe some of those there are agreements instead of leases for many organizations to be able to access different spaces. But then, as Jody was saying, there are some partner organizations where it just like we need them in there for longer than 1 year. It's not part of like an experiment, but it's instead part of a long-term community need that we will always be meeting through this building.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think? Just go with it?
I think we give them the flexibility that they need.
Okay.
So I just think they should have the flexibility they need to optimize the use of the space and keep the spaces for those who are stable and need to remain stable and in place, and then create work share for the others. If people can come in and touch down 2 days a week and know they've got a space, maybe they have to have a reservation system. There's probably something online that could help with that. maybe it could become a more useful space for everyone. And you wouldn't all feel so lonely out there when there's nobody there.
Are there physical confidentiality concerns? And what do those look like?
Yeah, well, like perps and victims and
Well,
stuff.
Yeah,
just
so
like
it's-
file storage. I mean, or is it really related to? Is it just people, or is it more than people?
No, I think there certainly are HIPAA considerations for our health organizations like Recovery Resources and Mind Springs and Community Health Services. And I'm not sure the extent of that. I would want to look into that some more. And I'm happy to do that too, to understand that landscape of what the needs are in the building.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking like if there's opportunities to offer, some sort of closet storage or something that they can move or use in a way that's combined with otherwise flexible offices, maybe that can help bridge those needs.
One of the things I think, Kelly, we've been seeing is that whenever we have kind of the hotel side of it, you come in with everything, you set up camp, and then you pick up camp and you go. And that's kind of an expectation that whatever records that you have, just keep them with you. Because if you lock them in vaults, there's always a fear of, somebody grabbing it. And so,
Well, I was
but we
thinking
can
more of like
certainly,
a, closet.
yeah, kind of a closet area or
Built.
something that's,
Yeah.
I love the fact that you guys are thinking about the flexibility standpoint, because it really, office space has changed a ton. We're seeing it even here in our own building, of how we're utilizing our own buildings. So I think that flexibility is something that we would certainly like you to support, for sure. So, but we get the concerns. I mean,
I think we're
even-
all in support.
Mhm.
Are you in support?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all in support of your giving this a shot, Lindsay and Jody. And Steve, do you have feelings about this? I don't see Steve.
Well, yeah,
Oh, there he is.
I would love to have the space fully used by nonprofits and, community oriented organizations. Whether they're in there or not, I'd rather not have space sitting there empty and not have someone being able to use it sometimes. But I really like the idea of the flexible workspace. For someone, it's just the same concept for, in no different, it's a new business model for community-based space where people can go in and use the space that other people use at other times. That's working other places, and I think we should probably take a look at some of those models and try to find out what is working best. What difficulties do they have? How do they iron them out? And we might be able to accommodate more nonprofits that way in the same space.
Thank you, Steve.
But don't leave space empty just because the people aren't in there 5 days a week. Maybe they're only in there 1 day a week. That's okay if they're providing an essential public service that is really important to the community.
Thanks, Steve. Lindsay, do you have what you need? Jody, do you have enough guidance here?
Yeah, I think this has been super helpful, and what I'll do, and maybe what Jody and I can work on, is coming back with a really clear recommendation of how clear but flexible about how that can look for us, so that we have those really nice, the bumper lanes are clear instead of should we do this or should we do this or how should we do this. But just in what we've talked about, understanding kind of the flexibility around a shared office space, some of the confidentiality concerns, like for the health organizations, could they be in one area together, or do they need a closet? Do they need, right? Are they in need of some confidentiality things as well? Considering short-term leases versus long-term and being flexible there, I think historically it's been kind of, we've done a 1-year lease or we've done a 5-year lease. We haven't really done different ones in the building. And so that's really nice and a relief to hear that we can kind of manage based on the partnership. It's strategic in terms of our partnerships and how we proceed. And then I also wrote down, we didn't really talk about this, but the IT implications. If we do kind of a hotel wing space, what are we going to be offering? Because it's kind of like it's offering in kind, but are we also offering a docking station and a way for people to set up and have a computer, or is it just an office? So I was going to look into that a little bit more as well, with the separate concept of an agreement. Like if I'm a partner organization, I might not have a lease, but I may have an agreement with the Health and Human Services divisions, so that we can be using this space under the same kinds of like the guise of the guidelines and some of those things. How'd I do?
Kelly?
Yeah, just on that topic, I would ask that you just talk with accounting about how a transformation from a lease to an agreement affects how we account for that contribution.
Yeah, Jody? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna add, yeah, there could be online reservation systems that take care of that. I'm thinking, Airbnb or a WeWork sort of online portal that might be very convenient and easy to use. Perhaps governments already do that, or WeWork spaces. They've got those systems set up, so it might be something you can plug and play. The other thing I was gonna throw out there is, if you have a lot of empty space, are there any opportunities to have an apartment, say, for a visiting healthcare professional or something? If we needed to house somebody, where do we house people if we bring someone into town as a consultant or as a part-time occasional worker? Is that an option we could consider there? And I don't know anything about the nature of the building, if that's possible.
I can comment on that. I'm not sure that building space would be
So
the ideal spot for that, Greg. We've been talking about our other houses that we have available for us that we can utilize to kind of meet that need. Yeah, no, it's a great thought, and housing is always an issue. I'm just not sure that with the type of services that are in there, might not be the right spot. But we can always look at it. We can always look at it, but I'm just not sure it's a good fit.
Sure. Then the
Or for-
online booking.
You bet.
Jody, did you want to say something?
Yes, if I may, just to kind of wrap this up too, is I know that the board has asked me on several occasions during the leasing to just go back and do a review of the rent per square foot calculation. So as we're working through this, we will do the same here to make sure if it's, an office space versus a whole suite of operations, we'll need to kind of do some investigative work on that, so that we're being consistent within the community somewhat,
Okay.
knowing it's nonprofits.
That's quite the haircut you have, Jody.
Yeah, she looks
Thank you
nice.
so much.
You must weigh 10 pounds
Can
less.
I offer a second question, too?
Thank
Kelly.
you.
Looks good.
I also, and I'm sure Lindsay thinks along these, well, I won't presume, but I wouldn't be surprised if Lindsay thinks along these lines as well, as if, that we recognize we have more spatial opportunity than we're currently using, perhaps as we're talking about mental health beds or something like that, that's coming out of the conversation with the jail, that it's more appropriate not to co-locate that at the jail, but perhaps at Human Services in the future.
yeah, you all approved the use of space for emergency winter shelter in the winter time. That was redundant, but there are some, I think, opportunities. When Greg was saying housing or workforce housing, I was thinking, ooh, step down transitional housing, right? Is there some other opportunities for the sake of the populations that we're working with for that kind of, where does it exist? If it doesn't exist, is that how we RFP or think about that space, any space that's opening up? Can be phased, incremental. It's not like we have to do this all at once, but just the guidelines are really helpful for us in how we proceed. Because we may, like I said, we may have some other opportunities where space starts to open up because of this world and how it's changed, and people are able to work more remotely, and it's not as necessary for them to be in the building, and they're noticing that. So
Just add
Yeah,
that,
go ahead, Greg.
if something came up, a pandemic, for instance, how unlikely is that? Where we really needed to change the use of that space, it might make the space that much more adaptable toward a crisis situation. Say the Castle Creek Bridge falls down, maybe we may need that space for some sort of some sort of event. So it might make it that much more versatile and useful to us. I think to contemplate the financial implications, of course, of all this, even though these are in-kind leases, we're not seeing a loss of rent, but we might be seeing an increase of expenses. And so we just need to keep track of that as well.
Mhm.
Okay, we should probably keep moving, but I have something to ask you, Lindsay, that's unrelated, if that's okay. I don't know if you saw the Tucker Carlson rant about Aspen and Martha's Vineyard, but shortly after it came out, we saw what happened in Martha's Vineyard. So I think we could probably count on that happening here. And I'm just wondering whether you guys would be prepared to handle 25 or 50 migrants if they arrived at Sardi Field.
I'm happy to give an update on that. Francie,
right.
thanks for asking. You're not the only one that's asking. It's been on all of our radars as Aspen could be a target for that kind of thing. So we actually pulled the ESF 6 and 8 teams together yesterday with Red Cross and did a planning session on this very thing of what we would do. We learned a few things. We learned that Red Cross is not currently helping with these. Well, they're not providing shelter for these emergencies as they're coming up because of lots of other emergencies that are happening, like fires and typhoons and other things. So it would be a responsibility of ESF 6. So we have some action plans of how we address this and where we would partner for shelter and things like that. And then we have reach out to the state as well in understanding if this happens to us, where do individuals go? So does the state have a plan, and how are we all working together? And I've also reached out to all the rest of the Northwest directors where, Vail is kind of another one where we could see that as a target. So talking with my Eagle County friends about whether they're planning or what, kind of what they're doing. But we do know that ESF 6 is completely capable of standing up a shelter. It wouldn't be long term. So we would want to be understanding how we are doing all the things that are required in ESF 6 and then how we manage to help people get to where they need to go, wherever that might be. But thank you for bringing it up, Francie. We're ahead of you, just one step.
That's great.
And we're working on it.
Good, thank you. That's great to hear. Okay, I think we are finished with you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you
See
so
you
much for
soon.
your guidance today. We'll see you soon with kind of a more proper recommendation. I appreciate you.
Okay,
You
All right,
too.
take care. Bye-bye.
so Bill and Chuck, I'm wondering if you're coming to speak, or are you just visiting us, or, because I don't see anything on the agenda that indicates.
We were told that Chuck could make a presentation during open discussion. And
Okay,
that's why we're here. And I may follow Chuck with a very brief comment.
it's Healthy Rivers.
Yeah, we've got that letter that was submitted to you all, so it would be on open discussion.
Okay, all right. So, do you want to go there now while they're here and come back to review of future agendas? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, let's see, we need to make sure Mona was going to also attend.
She's
We
on.
had some others.
Mona's on.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you would like. Sorry about that, my mic was off. If you would like to do that.
Can they?
Is this the methane thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering, are we waiting for more than Mona or just Mona? Are you there, Mona?
Yeah, we can see if Mona's on.
Here it comes. Lisa, the one we've been waiting for.
Well, there's Lisa, okay.
We may want to, I don't know if you want to just
I was
kind of
gonna
finish up
maybe-
this and then come back with the, just the items, unless if you got a lot under future items, I only have 2 small ones. Gives a little
I
bit
don't
more
have anything
time.
under future items except to clarify the Redstone meeting. Are you going to give us some clarity on that?
I do not have anything on that.
Well, shucky darns.
It's just on short-term rentals.
Yeah, it's on short-term rentals, but John, I thought, was going to speak to us about the format and exactly what that was going to look like. But I
Let
guess
me-
you guys are going to present, or he's going to present first. And that was the only
Yeah,
thing
let me see what I
had
can find out for you on that, Francie, okay?
on future, yeah.
I'm going to be out of town on the 4th of October. I'll be out of town on the 4th of October. I'll be trying to join via Zoom, but I will not be here that day. And it's possible I'll be doing the same on the 11th.
Really? Okay. All right, the 4th, I see that.
I had told, but it didn't make it onto the agenda, but that's all right.
You're going to miss Jeff Kruger. You always like that.
I can catch that later.
Okay. And what do you have for future agendas?
Just a couple of quick items. John Stavney from Northwest COG is confirmed, and he'll plan on attending the October 11th meeting, but most likely he'll be remote. But he's now confirmed for that.
Okay.
And then Matt
Yamashita.
Yamashita is looking to present to you all on deer management plan. We're also looking October 4th for about 30 minutes for that. So Charlotte's looking currently for ideas there, but it's mostly on the deer management plan, more around the maroon bells. So that's gonna,
Okay.
I want to come give you an update. So those are the only two I had.
All right. Anything from you, Kelly?
No, thank you.
Okay. So Lisa, are you going to upload this?
Is Mona ready?
Mona, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
I would turn on my video, but I'm on the bus.
Oh.
But hi, everybody. Thank you.
Hi, Mona.
All right. Great, yeah, thanks. It's great that we have Mona here. That's wonderful, and thank you. I'm Lisa Tasker. I'm with the Pickett County Healthy Rivers Program, and we're here today with one of our board members and a concerned citizen from the Crystal River Valley. And we have a letter that the board put together in regards to the methane project up in Cold Basin, which is a really remarkable project, Mona. It's wonderful that you're making this happen. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are signed on, and I'm going to let Chuck Downey, who's here, and Bill Yocums go ahead and speak about just some of the issues that they want to make sure are paid very close attention to with these efforts. But obviously, everybody's very supportive of seeing this happen, this project, because obviously methane is a huge issue. So, so I'd like to introduce both Bill Yocums, who is a 50-plus year resident of Redstone, now in Carbondale, and Chuck Downey, who is up in the Redstone area. Thank you.
So if you guys want to come up,
Yep.
and can we get 2 more mics going? Or? Nice to see you both.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I've been introduced. I'm Chuck Downey, and I live just upstream from Redstone, and I'm a very frequent visitor to Cold Basin, as you guys probably all know. I'm here to support the letter from Healthy Rivers to you, the commissioners, and then to the Forest Service about the impact on water quality in Cold Creek from the proposed methane trap and destroy project in Cold Basin. Sediment is flushed from the reclaimed mine area into Cold Creek from numerous summer rainstorms, and that's a pretty regular occurrence. However, reopening the unpaved mine roads and mine portal work areas without addressing mitigation methods in these 2 areas would make an already difficult water quality situation even worse. So here's the real reason I'm here. In a federal form, fancy number 299, which requests permission from the Forest Service to proceed with the methane project, the applicant submitted an impressively detailed 16-page response, but made no mention of water quality issues. The Healthy Rivers letter before you asks that the Forest Service require the applicant to consider mitigation measures to minimize the impact on water quality in the Forest Service's ongoing environmental analysis of the methane project. So in bottom line, I ask that you approve the Healthy Rivers Board and pass it or a version of it on to the Forest Service. Thanks.
Okay, any comments?
I would like to hear from Mona.
Yeah, I could just use an update. Like, I'm not sure where all of this is at.
Right.
in the
I'm looking for the
process.
letter myself.
I've read the letter. I totally
Right.
understand and respect the concerns. I just don't know where we're at.
Where is
in
that
all
letter?
this.
Charlotte sent it I had it this afternoon, I think.
Charlotte sent it.
It was attached on Monday, the 19th,
From Charlotte.
from Charlotte,
So you just recognize we
see
have a
that?
huge problem, that?
It's titled HS and HR and S, probably on your.
You want me to forward it? So
I
it's
can.
At the top
Do you
of
want
your
me to?
inbox?
No, I got it. I've just found it. Thank you.
Yes,
All right.
I'm kind of hoping that Mona may be able to give a little bit of background as to, where, Kelly, what you're saying.
Turn your mic on.
Okay.
Red light.
Did I get it?
Is it on red?
Red light.
Red. Yes. Okay, yes, I'm hoping that Mona will be able to give to where the Forest Service is in their EIS process, because the Healthy Rivers program did put together this letter this spring when this was first happening, and I had some conversations with the Forest Service just asking them to give me a little bit more background, and they said that they had not entirely decided what level of EIS to do at that point, and so they hadn't been moving forward, and they suggested that we would wait until this point in time to sort of bring this up. And also, they were also alerted at that time that the Healthy Rivers program was hearing about some issues that they were concerned about as far as water quality was concerned. So, so maybe Mona is able to do that as far as the EIS process right now. That'd be helpful.
Would you like to do that, Mona?
Yeah, thanks. So actually, we are meeting quite a bit of time, quite a few times with the Forest Service staff. We met with their resource specialists, with several of them. We hiked up there a couple weeks ago. There's another hike. We have another hike with the Forest Service staff on Thursday to discuss some of the issues. So they are bringing in their soil scientists, their hydrologists, their lead specialists, their reclamation, and the NEPA guy to have a conversation. We did submit the SF-299 back in May, and so they're asking questions about it, and we're not sure if we're going to revise it or not, because we're focusing the flow test on Dutch Creek 1 and 2, that area, and it ties into Elliswood, and that's it. Some of the concerns that the Forest Service have raised are the very similar concerns that were listed in the Healthy Rivers and Streams letter that you all received, which have been brought up at public meetings as well, and we're cognizant and attuned to those. And they have also come up during our Cold Basin Advisory Group. We have an advisory group that includes Greg, it includes Wilderness Workshop, Roaring Fork Conservancy, Aspen Ski Company, Holy Cross Energy, Corps, and Chris and myself, and then our technical folks. And they have brought that up to the point where Wilderness Workshop suggested that the project development team acquire a bond that would put such requirements on the reclamation process that would to ensure that the water quality, the area would be restored equally or better to what it is now. And just from a personal and professional standpoint, both Chris and I are climate people as well as environmentalists. And we don't want to see road erosion or water degradation. And I mean, to see that there were, you know, to learn that there were fish, or there were no fish in Coal Creek or potentially in the Crystal River is shocking. And I know that if we're involved in this project in the development phase of it all, or even during the flow test, that will not happen. We will, and the Forest Service has asked us to do some re-engineering of road spots in order to make sure that we control the erosion and to limit the traffic going in just for the flow test. And I just want to reiterate that while we are thinking longer term, that there could be a project going forward, whether it's a flare, electricity generation, right now our focus is the flow test as the pilot project. And so if the flow test bears out to be the quality and quantity of the methane that bears developing a project, that's a whole new environmental assessment process. So the NEPA process that we're in right now is just for the flow test. That's it. Nothing else beyond that. And so the level that we are looking at right now, what we've requested is a categorical exclusion for the flow test. And what we have stated and will continue to refine as we have these conversations with their staff and with the community is how much road improvement would be done. We're looking very, the minimal road improvement just to get the equipment in and not make it a road that a regular car could drive up or something, something really simple. And because we're looking at to what extent equipment could be flown in by helicopter. I realize that does bring some issues of its own between noise and disturbance. We're having those conversations. I just met with the cattlemen's group this morning, a representative, and the outfitters group as well. So we're wanting to try to, within the window of conducting the flow test, which hopefully would be next summer, because nothing will happen this fall where the window's really closing, we would conduct a flow test next spring and summer. And that would probably be around 3 months. And it would take the time to bring the equipment in, conduct the flow test, and then pull the equipment out. And our series of reclamation will then also depend on the results of the flow test. But regardless, if the flow test or a new project is done, we will restore the land to what it was before. And during the process, we will do, best practices for erosion control to minimize disturbance of that area. And as we have been saying, return it to what it is, and or the idea is better. So that's where we're thinking about, and that's where our goal is. Does that answer your question? I rambled a bit there, Lisa.
No, that was really helpful, Mona. And I think the great news here is that, it doesn't surprise, I don't think, anyone who's sitting here, but that these issues that the Healthy Rivers Program and Chuck and Bill have articulated very clearly are already really on the map, and they're in the discussions. And so I think that, the letter is just reflective of where the board has kind of been coming from, and it sounds like this is in the process, but of course I think it's always great to have something in writing, so. But I would like to ask, and thank you so much, Mona, that was super helpful, because I don't think any of us really knew exactly, where things were, and I've seen your hike for this Friday now in a number of places, so it's really being well advertised, which is wonderful. A 9-mile hike. Yeah, 9-mile hike. It's like that takes a certain person to sign up for that. But yeah. Anyway, so Yeah, I would like Bill, if you'd like to, I'll let you guys decide whether you want Bill to
Kelly, go ahead.
speak.
And
Yeah.
then
Sure.
We'll go to Bill.
Yeah, no, I have some follow-up questions, I think one for Mona and then one that we can answer later. But Mona, can you just describe what are the mechanics of the flow test that it's being requested to have the categorical exclusion?
Sure. And if you'll give me a second, I could probably share my screen because I had a presentation pulled up earlier today. Maybe not. I'll just describe it rather than go through that. So the idea is that we will improve the road, re-engineer some of the spots in the road so that we can drive a truck up, drive a mini X, that's what we've been talking about, a mini excavator up there to take out some of the bumps in the road and get up there and then excavate the portals. So those of you that have been up there, Greg, Steve, Francie, I can't remember if you went to the top or not, but there's a main portal there, and that's portal number 1. I always get them mixed up because Dutch Creek 1 and 2 are on top of each other. And so excavating there, and we would open up that portal again and block it off with bricks or some kind of material and foam, except for a round hole in it that would have a pipe. And so because Dutch Creek 1 and 2 are connected, we can gently draw methane, bring all the methane in to one location and gently draw it out to measure it. So there'd be some measuring device. It's a test kit is what it is. So it's a measuring device. We'll have some equipment on it that measures it. There will be a pipe. There will be some other equipment there. So that footprint is pretty small. I think we've said 1 acre for the whole area to have room for a truck turnaround, that kind of thing. And that would go on for a few weeks to measure the quality and quantity of the methane. And it would be fenced off so that, it wouldn't be bothered and there wouldn't be daily activity up there, but definitely frequent activity up there. We would do, as we bring in and out the equipment, we would do washing for noxious weeds, and we would work to make sure we're not messing with calving season or hunting season, 2 points that were brought up this morning. So, but the equipment would be put in there. We have a test kit, and I can, at a later date, I can give you another presentation and show you, but that's what we would do. So the focus is on 2 portals. Primarily the activity would be at 1 portal with a pipe that comes out and some equipment that's on a trailer, a trailer bed to measure the methane.
Does that answer that for you?
Yeah, that does. Yeah, and then I guess I'm wondering, did we dedicate any staff as like a point for Pickens County on this project?
Yep.
Whoever can answer.
Yeah. Nice to see you, Kara.
Well, we have, we've also met with Brian Pettit, the Director of Public Works, regarding the road. So we've had a number of point people, let me just say that.
So it is in transition as Cindy was going to start offloading some details on this project as once we both got back from vacation. So this all happened, but Cindy's going to start transferring some of what she knew about the project as well to be a point on as it relates to core managing the project and kind of that relationship.
So it's going to go to whoever is going to manage the core portfolio?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. It sounds like a great opportunity to get our own coordination in-house, a little, aligned.
So one recommendation or consideration for the board that Cindy and I have briefly touched on is having Mona and Core come and give quarterly updates about this project and kind of answer any questions. And so it's one thing that we could look into and bring back to the board at a future date.
Okay. Bill, did you want to?
And we'd be happy to.
Bill?
Yes, I'm Bill Yocums. Along with Chuck, although not as active as Chuck, was involved in pushing for the reclamation of this after Mid-Continent shut down in '92. And of course, Mid-Continent's main problem of an environmental nature was creating sediments that got into Coal Creek and thence the Crystal River and even detectable in the Roaring Fork. So, and I'm also a Healthy Rivers Board member and support that letter. Now, I just want you to think about this. A flow test is one thing, and I believe that can be done with minimal disturbance, as was described here. But should the flow test encourage large-scale production, then we move into an entirely different phase where possibly even some form of fracking of the coal seam will be required to stimulate flows beyond what's just accumulated now. They're looking forward to what can be drawn out of the beds, and that may require some fairly extensive industrialization, if you will, of a coal basin. So when you consider what you're going to, the communication you're going to give to the Forest Service, I hope that you consider the possibility of what may follow the flow test, and that you take these assurances and promises that you're hearing now for consideration of the environment and water quality, that you see that you do your best to influence the Forest Service to make those promises requirements. Thank you.
I would anticipate that we would. Do you want to speak to this, Greg?
Yeah, and I appreciate the concerns. Having been on the Healthy Rivers Board with Bill back at the day, and then Lisa, and then ending up on this board, I certainly share the concerns, and I appreciate that letter. I think that first of all, we have to clear something up. When, say, the flow test is, and Mona, you can jump in to correct me if necessary. Say the flow test is successful and that it measures a significant quantity of methane, which, as we know, is a greenhouse gas, which is poisoning the atmosphere. And they want to go and get it. The they is really we, first of all. So that's an interesting issue, and that's a dilemma that we're going to have. You know, we've got to figure out what is the balance of, you know, how important is this to neutralize versus doing nothing. And that's going to be an interesting conversation. I wish you'd brought your grandchildren. I really do, because this is an important thing. On the other hand, we need to protect this land. The thing that Bill said, which isn't quite accurate, is there will not be hydraulic fracturing to get more. That's not the point. The point is to get what would be coming out naturally and then try to seal it off. It's not trying to get more. This doesn't become an extraction business that is trying to suck more methane out and creating an industrial thing. That's an entirely different thing. And so that's not part of the conversation. The flow test is going to be a minimal number of vehicles going in to establish the flow test. And I'm certainly share your concerns about the road, and that's what all this has been about. If they go into production, it would be a facility that was established there that would not have a lot of traffic back and forth. It would be a fairly simple thing that would require occasional maintenance. Chris Caskey and Julian, his consultant, and Mona could probably enlighten us more about that. But this isn't an industrial mining operation trying to get a lot more methane out. That's not the goal, and I think that would not even be allowed. So, Mona, if I've said anything that isn't accurate, please correct me.
No, that's right, and I just want to reiterate, our intention is not to mine the methane. Our intention is to capture what is being emitted naturally, because it's lighter than air, and it's rising out of those mine portals. So, yeah, fracking, I guess coal mining is the greatest use of fracking technology, but we don't intend to do that at all. So that's the project. No. And thank you, Greg. Yes, it's correct. There will be minimal vehicles traveling up and down if a project gets developed. So, and that's really, when we're talking right now, we are just talking about the flow test. We do need to think from the longer term, but it is right now, it's the flow test.
And while you're at it, if you could just share with me again, because I know the actual estimates of what the possible problem with the methane release is in terms of tons of carbon or cars on the highway. How are you framing that now when you discuss the potential?
Yeah, so it's about, I don't remember the numbers exactly for Picken County, like 580,000 tons of methane or CO2, and this is somewhere in the neighborhood of half to 2/3 of what the county produces. So this is significant, and even if it's not as significant, then we should have a conversation on how to deal with it, because it's quite a bit of methane, and it's a more severe greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is.
Great, thank you. And I think this is also considered one of the most significant methane releases in the state. Is that still
Yes,
that's framed?
Yes, and it's in the report that Ruby Canyon Engineering did for the Colorado Energy Office. These mines are right at the top of they're the top 10, the top 1, 2, and 3 between Dutch Creek 1, Dutch Creek 2, and Ellis Creek.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, Kelly?
I'd like to see if we can maybe direct Healthy Rivers staff, ComDev staff, to work together on a public comment from us. I don't know what the public comment period is right now, and that's a little unclear to me. So, but I'm reading from the Healthy Rivers that this application will have a public comment period coming, so that would be a good opportunity for us to review what our clear guidance is to the Forest Service.
I would certainly support that. I think that it's funny when we want to make a public comment against something that we're actually proposing to do. It feels like several hands on the same monster, fighting against each other.
Why do you think it's against?
Well, no. What if what we're told is that we need to demand more scrutiny on the part of the Forest Service, as I think has been recommended here. I think if the scrutiny wasn't there and hasn't been there, certainly it needs to be considered, and I'm fully in support of that. But I also don't want to make it more difficult to keep moving, because I keep thinking, well, you go into a NEPA process and it ties it up for another 4 years. Is that the goal here? I think that what we're trying to do is figure out if we really do have a significant problem, and then move forward from there. So
can I just read the sentence that the Healthy Rivers Board requests?
Sure, go
it
ahead.
says,
I
it
don't wanna
recommends Picken
debate this,
County ask the Forest Service to require the proposed methane project be conducted in a manner that minimizes activities that increase erosion, requires state-of-the-art erosion control practices, and maintains or improves water quality.
Right, and I think that's was implied, and if there's no mention of it in the original application, I truly am surprised by that also, because whenever I've been in a conversation, water quality has been right up there, as with not disturbing what reclamation has already been done. So I'm surprised if it's not part of it, and if you've discovered that it's not, then I agree that it should be.
And we as well, I've talked with Chris Caskey, and we completely agree. There's no interest in trying not to use best practices for erosion control and maintaining water quality.
Yeah, and I think, Mona, you and Chris would probably remember that's been part of the conversation since the beginning, as long as I've been involved. But
yes, it has.
Forest Service, I'm sure, as well. So if it needs to be in writing, I understand that and I support
So
that.
Bill,
The
are
letter
you-
says it has not been, so without us having vetted it, I just want to make sure we're.
Yeah, so Bill, you're asking us to approve this letter?
Yes,
Yeah, that's what you're asking. That's why you're
yes,
here.
yes.
So can we approve this letter?
We haven't drafted it. They've asked us to write a letter to the Forest Service ensuring that erosion control practices, water quality.
But I thought he was also
protections-
asking support for this particular letter that Healthy Rivers wrote. Is that true?
That's true.
I guess, that's what I thought, but, so now I'm confused.
Could I?
Help us out, Lisa.
Could I propose that we also just have our staff circle back with the Forest Service to get up, so they're not here today, and I wish they were, because they may have a perspective on this that we're not hearing.
Yeah, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but I do think that, the board is just very cognizant that this is a very important project, a very important Picken County funded project as well. And that they just wanted, it was just a bit shocking. Chuck Downey alerted us to this, and I think that the wheels have been spinning now for months, so a lot of things have been happening. But, so I think this really was a letter to the commissioners and then to make a decision on what to do from there. So I think it wasn't necessarily needed to be included in, any communication with the Forest Service, but just that the commissioners would go ahead and include it in anything that they did going forward.
I'd support that it be included in any correspondence with the Forest Service. And Chuck, I do want to thank you for participating, because we need your voice and everyone else's who's participating in this. So I don't want to sound like I'm being defensive. What I'm worried about, of course, is thinking, wow, what kind of can of worms does it open if the Forest Service has to go back and start over, for instance? Or, that's my biggest fear, is that, okay, we tie it up bureaucratically and nothing ever happens.
Well, I can't imagine that the Forest Service would do anything without considering erosion and erosion control practices.
Correct.
And maintaining or improving water quality.
So
I mean,
just
I would
don't
certainly
understand the
hope
harm
they
in
wouldn't.
saying that.
What?
I just don't see the harm in us saying
No, I don't
that
see any harm in
either.
us saying that either.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
so,
Have we heard from Steve? Is he still with us?
Steve, are you out there?
I'm out here. My hand's been up for about 10
Oh,
minutes.
we can't
already.
see it.
I'm sorry, I've been reading the letter, and I'm so sorry. You're so patient. Go ahead.
No, my face is on the screen behind you. I don't know if it's on the screen in front of you also, but
It's not.
I'm fully supportive of sending this letter or our own version from the BOCC to the Forest Service. And I can't imagine that they would not consider water quality issues in studying this. They always look at water quality on any project they do. One thing that I think maybe should be done as a part of a baseline study, I am curious about what is the quality of the water? What is in the water that is coming out of the portal there by the Lamp House building? That water's coming right out of the mine. Does it contain methane that's dissolved in the water? Does it contain other things that we should know about? And so I think water quality tests should be conducted of the water coming out of the mine right now before we do anything. And also just a water quality test in Coal Creek, the natural flow coming down Coal Creek. We know that the sediment has been largely cleared up. But what other things are in there? And I think that would be useful, could be useful information to know in the future.
And I think some samples have been taken, and I'll circle back with Chris and some of you know the Katina Foundation has a CSU scientist. I don't think anybody has tested the water. I mean, because one, the cattle have drank it and none of them have gotten sick or died. But none of us have, I don't think any of us have been focused on the water quality that comes out of the mine portal, because you're correct, Steve. When you are at the Lamp House, there is an adit where water comes out of there, and and it's flowing through the mine.
And one other point, looking at the big picture, any debris flow event from a wildfire area in half a day will put more sediment in the river, like the Colorado River and Glenwood Canyon, probably than all the sediment that ever got put in Coal Creek from the mining operation. And that's the big picture, that we are trying to do a constructive thing to deal with climate change and to get it turned around so our temperatures won't keep rising. We will potentially have fewer wildfires in the future and fewer heavy rain events that cause a huge debris flow down into our rivers and streams in Colorado and California and every place. So, we're trying to stop the huge problem of climate change here, which will have much more major long-term environmental impacts for everything, including water quality. So I want to keep my eyes on the big goal that we're trying to achieve here. And I think we can do it while protecting Coal Creek from, sediment. There are good state-of-the-art road construction and ways to deal with the water coming off of a road to minimize the amount of sediment in the stream. I think it would also be worth perhaps looking at our idea that we had a couple of years ago to build sediment ponds in the county open space land behind the coke ovens, which we had talked about doing that at one time, and maybe that would be part of our mitigation for this project, is to build a sediment capture system on our open space land, and then that would minimize the sediment going into the Crystal River. And we're not going to have anywhere near the sediment that was produced by the coal mining operation, because that was like pretty much a scorched earth thing that they had going up there compared to the minimal impact that we'll have on this project. And that's all I have to say for now.
Well, I think, Bill and Chuck, that we totally support your concerns, and anytime we're communicating with the Forest Service, we will relay these concerns to them. And unless anybody else has anything to say, yeah, Greg.
Kelly had her hand up first, but I'll.
Yeah, no, I'm supportive of the coal basin capture project. I think because it's like a proof of concept, that, being able to minimize any negative consequence related to it, like, strengthens its proof of concept for others to adopt around the state. So I believe there's really a clear path forward here on being able to do this well, and I do trust that it will be done, and I think we can just reassure that with our own active participation with the Forest Service.
I agree. If I could, we did speak about at Healthy Rivers, as I recall, years ago, mitigation ponds in Coal Basin. But I think the water, maybe the Katina Foundation's work has actually done a lot to clean the water up. I hear there are trout in there now, according to so it's possible the turbidity has been reduced and that has been taken care of. But I would be open to revisiting the idea of the ponds, perhaps for large rain events, things like that, to help keep the turbidity down and keep all the debris, whatever it is, flowing out of there. The Mancos Shale, I guess, is what it is. We could revisit that, but I was under the assumption maybe that had been taken care of in a separate way than the ponds we considered down near behind the coke ovens on property that we own. I wanted to ask if I could ask Mona, if she's still there. Have we heard anything from the CSU scientists yet on their flow methane study? Is she still there?
I don't see her.
Uh-oh,
She's
maybe
not on my
we lost
computer.
her.
She's probably
That'd be
getting
a
off the
future
bus.
conversation. Kara, maybe you know that, but they were doing a separate study from CSU because they want to be certain that if we go in there, there's a really good reason. And so they're doing additional research, and I was thinking we'd be hearing about that fairly soon. And that'd be a good question to take then. Great, thank you.
All right, well, we were supposed to adjourn almost 15 minutes ago, so I'm going to bring this to a close here. Yeah, Rich?
I was just going to follow up from a staff's perspective. We've heard the conversation today. I think we do want to find out the best approach to be able to have that voice with the Forest Service. So I like Kara's idea of also a quarterly update for you all from CORE as well. So
That'd be great.
So we'll work on our end to get that for you. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you guys so much for coming in. I always enjoy seeing you and listening to you.
Thanks. You make a good conversation.
So we have board membership reports, and I don't think they'll take very long. Kelly, do you have any reports?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up for APSHA, I think this is interesting, and I may just have Charlotte forward it along, but we're talking about the results from the right sizing survey. So talking about how do we best fill the empty bedrooms or get people to downsize when they're in a unit bigger than what they status. And, you know, I've been surprised. There was almost 500 responses, which I thought were really good. And 50% of those were from people in larger units, 3 and 4 bedroom units. And, you know, there was, in summary, let's see. There was a good amount that would say yes or maybe to accepting some incentives. And those incentives that were most compelling to have people move were moving to a better location, receiving cash, or having a garage with a smaller unit. And so we're going to be talking about some of this tomorrow, and I think batting around ideas on how we proceed. I will just note, I think it will merit a bigger conversation at this board because APSHA doesn't have money right now for a program like this. You know, this was a totally exploratory conversation, and to see if there were ways that could accomplish some of this without funding. And obviously there are some ways that may require funding, and so I wanted to bring it to all of your attention. I think in the future, you know, if we are asked for some financial contribution, this is probably a better bang for a buck than any other similar type housing program.
That's
so
cool.
I wanted to share that this is a conversation that APSHA is going on and how to best utilize the inventory. You know, we are hearing the frustrations people have with empty bedrooms around the community and trying to act on it. And so I'll forward this to Charlotte to send to you. The first 2 pages are really the summary.
Great.
So you can look at that.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
I noticed the ski company in, I think it's today's paper, is offering ski passes for empty bedrooms.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's part of the conversation.
So what APSHA did in collaboration with SkiCo last year on that program was to, you know, it doesn't, normally you can't take incentives like that in the APSHA rules, but it's waived the rules for that. People who rent, you know, who are in an APSHA unit are allowed to enter into that program. If they rent to somebody, it still has to meet APSHA's terms for subletting a room. So they can't overcharge people. You know, the rents are typically
So they get a
set.
ski pass and the rent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, if
So
that
that's
works,
how-
maybe we could try expanding that with restaurateurs
You know.
offering something, or affordable restaurant deal. Who knows?
Any other organizations to report on?
Let's see. No, I mean, CCI, you know, CCI and CCAT are both in this process of like trying to figure out what our legislative priorities are going to be for the next session that starts in January. And so I will bring back, probably during an open discussion, the short list of bills for CCI consideration, because Steve will be voting on those in early October as our legislative rep. And CCAT's process will take place later in the year. We'll have a winter retreat in November. And then not much to report from Colorado River Basin Roundtable.
Well, I will report a little bit on the Colorado River Basin. I went to the annual meeting of the River District on Friday with John, and the morning was really interesting, and of course I left my notes on my desk at home. But they had 4 presenters from different areas downstream. They had the Imperial Valley. That guy was incredibly interesting, and he told us the history of the Imperial Valley. They were actually the very first users of the Colorado River that weren't Native Americans.
Interesting.
And so they started using it a long time ago. And they developed the valley around sort of unlimited use of the Colorado River. So then when the compact came into play, they just had to start cutting back. And it was an incredible presentation. And then they had somebody from the Central Arizona Project, Central Arizona Project. And they have also had to cut back significantly. Arizona's been hit with more restrictions than anywhere else, and they've been cutting back actually for quite a while. There was a picture of the ditch from the Central Arizona Project cutting through the desert. It was the weirdest looking thing, like just this, it looks black in the picture, not blue, but sort of like this bluish black stream encased in concrete cutting through the desert for miles and miles. And just the threat to wildlife alone when they fall in that, there's no way out. And it was just really interesting. And then there was somebody from the Utah, the Strawberry something in Utah, that's sort of their central distribution center. He presented, and then we had Southwest Colorado. He didn't say very much. But what I found really interesting, and I talked to George Newman about this at the caucus meeting on Saturday, nobody talked about the populations of Phoenix and Tucson and Southern California and doing anything about populations. So they're talking about building models. Well, one of the things they talked about is that when the River Compact came into play, they adjudicated 17 million acre feet of water. Well, it's never been 17 million. And so it was 15 million for quite a while, and then the upper states, which is us, New Mexico, Utah, and
Wyoming.
Yeah, thank you, and Wyoming got 7.5, and then Arizona and California and Nevada got 7.5, and then Mexico got one, and the tribes got 1, or something like that. So it came to 17, of which there was not that much water. But anyway, now the prediction is that we're going to be at about 9 million. And that's what the future is going to look like. So they're talking about how to parse out this water between all the states and the tribes are way more active about claiming their own water now than they didn't have a voice before. So they have much more of a voice now. They were there was a presentation with them, just the Utes, yeah. But they're premising all of these steps that they're going to be taking on a population of about 40 million in the Colorado River Basin. Well, it's not going to be too long before it's 80 million if nothing is changed. And then all the work is for naught because there isn't enough water for 80 million people. So I just thought that was really interesting that after watching for several hours of how the name of the conference was Overdrawn, about how we don't have enough water, we have to take these steps, people have to cut back, everybody has to cut back, all users of the Colorado River have to cut back, agriculture, domestic, municipalities, everybody, but not a single word about at some level, it's very un-American, but saying we can't keep building up the Southwest, we don't have water for the Southwest, without augmentation from the Great Lakes or the Snake River, the Columbia, or the Missouri. Those are the 4 that have been on the table. And obviously everybody thinks, well, the Great Lakes has so much water and it rains up there so much. But there was when it was first proposed to divert water from the Great Lakes to the Colorado River, there was discussion about it, and it was decided that there wouldn't be a decision made for 10 years. I believe it was in 55, something like that. So there was a 10-year sort of moratorium on pursuing that any further. Well, in that 10 years, all the states around the Great Lakes put together their own compact, which precludes any water leaving the Great Lakes that isn't to an adjoining state. And so obviously the Snake River and the Columbia and the Missouri all feel the same way. So without that augmentation, we're going to have to look at population at some point. I mean, it's just crazy that we don't. So that was
I,
it.
I mean, I wouldn't jump to that conclusion because I think some of it is that people, use per capita continues to go down. That's why you don't hear about it as part of like the calculation of.
Oh, we did hear about use per capita. We heard a lot about use per capita. But you can only cut agriculture back so far before it isn't agriculture anymore. And that's already happened to a lot of farmers in Arizona and the Imperial Valley. So, yeah, we can keep building municipalities and telling everybody, you only get 3 baths a week, but then we don't have any agriculture. So, most of our vegetables come out of the Imperial Valley. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, that was interesting. John and I actually left early. They kind of wind down in the afternoon, those conferences. So, anyway, it was really interesting. A lot of interesting information. I'll look over my notes and see if I'm missing something that was key, but it was pretty cool.
Great.
It was learning about it was really cool, but it was very bleak. The whole picture was very bleak. So. Anything else from anybody else? Do you have anything, Steve, from your organizations?
Yeah, like everybody's going to be having their meetings very shortly. Tomorrow morning, there was supposed to be a Club 20 caucus meeting here at Aspen City Hall at 8 o'clock in the morning. Now they have canceled that and they're going to do a virtual meeting sometime next week, which I was planning on attending the one in the morning. And so Rachel and I and one other person who's a staff person at the city of Aspen have been the 3 people for the last 2 years who were Club 20 representatives from Pitkin County. And I know Rachel and I are both planning to continue with, Rachel has been the voting member, which we only get 1 vote for Pitkin County on different items. And it makes sense for her to be the voting member because she's also on the executive board for Club 20. And then I'm more of a supporting role, or if Rachel's not there, then I would have an actual vote at the meetings. But I'm glad to continue that. I'm planning on, putting my name in the hat again. And it never has been any competition from lots of people showing up. I think the most we ever had were 3 people show up at these county caucus meetings. There could be other people certainly could get involved. There really hasn't been anyone from the ski company or ACRA or any commercial enterprises has never shown up to represent Pitkin County at Club 20. They certainly would be welcome to, but anyhow, that's my plan. I'll put my hat in the ring again, and I presume I will still continue being one of the 3 Pitkin County representatives on Club 20. The other organizations all have meetings coming up with really nothing, no new updates at this time.
Thank you. Greg?
Make sure my mic is on. Yeah, I don't have a lot here because it was, summer. Not a lot has happened. Course, we hired a new executive director, and his part of his deal for coming to work with us was that he got the first 3 weeks off. So he's just got back to town, I think today or tomorrow. So I think things are going to start happening this fall, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about CORE, and it's all good. QQ, it's been a while since we've had a QQ meeting, so I don't have anything to report on that. CC4CA, I know, has been working on CC4CA policy was the last meeting I attended last week. Nothing really, I don't believe there's anything to report there, but if I'm missing something, Kelly, let me know. The Board of Health had our quarterly meeting last week. We're looking forward to the appointment of a new Board of Health member. And what was remarkable is we have a lot of great candidates, and I wish we could include everybody somehow because we've got such great talent and skill coming into the sphere. It'd be nice to be able to. I wish we had advisory boards for Board of Health. We could consider that. RAFTA, Francie,
I don't think we
Raptor's
have
working on
anything
some
new.
initiatives. I think
Yeah.
the big initiatives are still in executive session material, but there are some good things happening. There was talk about Basalt's new circulator, which has had quite successful, really. They have 2 circulator vans that are working in Basalt. They're taking cars off the highway and getting them to the bus stops. That's been working well. They're talking about expanding it. Of course, I'm always pushing that they electrify, because circulators are actually the most ideal things for electrification. Shorter haul, easier to charge, and that's where the low-hanging fruit is when we're electrifying versus the big, expensive over-the-road buses. So I still push for that. We'll see where, it's down. It will get there.
I think they are
Yeah,
actually.
they will eventually.
They're in the plan. There's
Yeah.
like 7 for next year and then 5. And remember,
Yeah,
it was
they're
in
coming out
that
for the
plan
buses,
that
yeah.
we saw for the.
Yeah. Let's see. RWAPA, Root Water and Power. RWAPA is, I guess the best way to describe it would be kind of the scope of work of RWAPA and staff is changing, and we're contemplating changes where RWAPA would be taking a larger role in various water issues in the immediate region. And I'll have more on that. We're going to have a special meeting, I believe, coming up fairly soon to discuss this. And I can anticipate there'll be an ask of an increased budget from RWAPA, only because things are costing more with whether it's the mussel mitigation program or other administrative things. But then there's some other projects. So we're going to be hearing more from RWAPA's executive director on that, and it's probably going to include a budgetary ask. Workforce Investment Board, I don't really, it's on here. I think Patty put me on this list. Honestly, I have not really participated much with them, so I don't know. I don't have anything to report on that. It might become useful if we're trying to find jobs for people. Right now, I think we're trying to find people for jobs. I'm not sure if that's going to really be their thing, but others here may know more than me. Regarding BLM and the U.S. Forest Service, I don't have anything right now. I've had calls into some Forest Service guys, but I think they're all out hunting. This time of year, they just don't answer the phone, or at least the guys I'm trying to reach. That's it for me for there.
2 more updates. Sorry, Francie.
Okay.
So I sit on this task force on tax policy, and this fall we are having a conversation related to potential changes the legislature might consider regarding sales and use tax and the application of sales and use tax to services. Some services already are taxed, so like utility service is taxed in addition to taxing what you actually pay on the generation of electricity. The service to deliver it to you is already taxed, and there's others. I'm happy to go into more. It's a new topic for me. I'm learning a lot, but there's things like, we're concerns about pyramiding of taxes between businesses. So like, is the tax applied from business to business or just to this end user? Those kind of things. So that's going on at the request of the legislature for input from people who are really smart on this committee. And then Wild and Scenic, I wanted to update. So we've finally gotten all the comments back from this really small group working on the draft RFP, and hope to get that out to the broader scoping group here in the next week or so that we can finalize that and actually open up the RFP to start soliciting for facilitators. So a little bit of a milestone this week, which is good.
Yeah, that would be great.
On a
I'm
really
not
slow
even,
process.
I'm not holding my breath.
Francie?
Yeah.
I thought of one more thing about Club 20 that is of interest.
All right, let me see if I can see
When I was in
you again.
Alaska, I attended a meeting of the Energy Committee, which they have a new chair of that committee. And the committee is looking at all of the Club 20's energy policies and going to make recommendations to delete some, to amend others, and maybe fill in some gaps to create policy where there is not policy in terms of their energy policy. Now, they use their policy for the Club 20 staff when they are lobbying at the state capitol and whatnot to know where the membership stands on the different issues. But to me, the Energy Committee is one of the most important ones. They also have a Water Committee, which is very important. But anyhow, I've been participating on the Energy Committee, and you know, we're dealing with oil and gas drilling and uranium and renewable energy, and now they're talking about energy storage, electricity storage systems.
Okay.
So there's you know, a lot on the plate there. So I think that's interesting, and I'll keep you posted on where we go with the policy decisions there.
Okay. Are we done? Are you done, Rich?
I'm done.
Okay. I think we can go home. This
Okay.
meeting is adjourned.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks, Francie.
Good job.
Thank you.